Woohoo! All right, friends, it is time for a launch recap. And I absolutely love these types of episodes. I've done a few for template launches, but this is about my first course ever. So it's fun to talk about launching from a different angle and for a product that's cart open, cart closed model versus my templates that are always for sale. So in this episode, I'm going to share the nitty gritty details of this launch, including what I did leading up to it, what worked, what didn't, what went really well, what I'd change for next time, and just some different things I've learned, and just really just talking you through what the experience was like. So for the context of this episode, refer back to episode 110 if you haven't listened to that one. I talked in that one about why I decided to do a beta launch for this course when originally I was waiting to create the whole thing first. And then episode 77 was when I first introduced the idea that I was creating this course, which, as you can see, episode 77 to 110 is a lot of weeks of me not having made the course. But I talk about that in that episode. So that was my announcement that this was coming. So anyway, this is going to be a really fun one. Let's dive into discussing the ins and outs of my Booked Out Designer course launch. Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. Okay, so fun thing before we get started, I actually just kind of had this realization as I went into recording, but I'm recording this exactly a month from the launch date, exactly to the day. And I know that because my sweet students who did recurring payments, who did the payment plan option, their payments all just came out this morning. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, it's the exact same day a month later. And I did not plan that, but it feels really fun to be recapping it on that same day a month later. And you guys will be hearing this later than that. But to start, I want to just share what this is I launched if you're new here or if you don't know what I do or anything like that. And I'll keep this real brief and then we'll get into all the good stuff. So I'm a website designer by trade, and I built up a successful six-figure-a-year business doing work with clients one-on-one as a website designer. And then I later built a website template shop. And so those have been my main things for a while now in my business. The main one in more recent years being my website template shop. But I have always desired to help other designers figure out how to run a design business because there are some things I figured out along that way of working with clients and really figuring out my niche and figuring out pricing, all of that I just love to be able to share. And if you listen to this podcast, if you have for a while, then you know I love sharing what I know and what I'm learning and what's working, what's not. And so because of that, I've always felt like courses are going to be a natural next step for me at some point. And when thinking about okay, what's the first course I want to do? I knew a course for designers was really high up on that list because that's been a desire of mine for so long. I talk about that in episode 77 when I first announced the course. So it took me forever though to really take action on it, which is what I talk about in episode 110 about why I decided to do a beta launch. It was just taking me forever. This is a really big course. It is full of all kinds of amazing content, really everything you need to know for running a design business. And so it's been a lot to create. And so I'm glad that I ended up choosing to launch it. And you'll see why as we talk through this episode. But then I decided to launch it before it was completely done because the demand was there and people were excited to dive into it, even if it wasn't finished yet. So like I already said, the course is called Booked Out Designer, and it's for designers designers, as you might think from the name, and specifically focusing on brand designers, website designers, and other types of graphic design, like stationery and other forms, like maybe you specialize in books or ebooks and things like that. So we have in this founding members group people in all of those fields, but the biggest one would probably be website designers and brand designers. And I design on Show It, as you guys know, but it's really cool because this course is not about Show It. And in our founding members group, which is what I call the people who joined in this beta launch that we're talking about, there are people who do, Squarespace to Wix to WordPress, like all Shopify, Kajabi. We have literally people specializing in all different ones, and of course, Show It too. So that's really cool. It's not like a one platform only type of course. And yeah, so it's not a how to design course. So we do talk about how to design a little bit, but it's more how to run a business as a designer. So like specifically thinking you're a designer, here's how to market, here's how to network, here's how to do discovery calls, how to run client projects, how to manage your finances, how to price things like contracts. I mean, gosh, there's so much stuff in it, and I'm covering like all that stuff and more. And at the time I'm recording this, I'm about halfway or almost halfway through with creating the course. And again, I beta launched it before it was done, and I'm dripping the content out as I have it created to the founding members. And then when I launch it again later on, the course content will just all be in there for people to consume and learn in like whatever order they want to do. So that's the offer in a summary. And basically like a way, like whenever people are like, what is this course, Elizabeth? I like to say it's a business course for designers on how to get booked out, charge premium prices, and become in demand as a designer. That's a huge piece of it. But that element of getting booked out is how I came up with the name Booked Out Designer. That was just like what I kept thinking of it as in my head, and then I eventually went with it. So that is the course. And if you do want to get on the wait list, I'm going to be linking to info on that in the show notes, but I'll go ahead and tell you it's elizabethmccravey.com/waitlist. And you can join that if you want info on it when it opens again this summer of 2021. That's when it's opening again. So exciting little plug there. Okay, so now let's talk about leading up to the launch, what I did and what that like experience was like. So I have a lot to say here. And in reality, the biggest thing I have to say is that this was a really low maintenance launch, which I feel like I trend towards that always. Like template launches tend to be pretty low maintenance too for me. But this was like way more low maintenance than those even. And like the last like quote unquote big launch like thing I did was my Black Friday sale last year on my website templates, which was not a launch, but it was a big sale and there was a lot to execute there. And that felt so much more intense than like this did. So this felt very low maintenance in comparison to that. So there were no webinars, no Facebook ads, no live video. I was planning to do a live video, but never got a chance to because it sold out before then. I didn't do any sort of challenges or like a free Facebook group beforehand or anything like that. I just put the offer out there and people purchased. So it was a really low cost and fast launch. And I say I put the offer out there and people purchased, but I also feel like I should emphasize, even as saying that, like I built up demand for this. I talked about it for, going back to episode 77 of 2020. So I've been talking about this for a while. And people were excited and ready for it. So it wasn't like all of a sudden out of the blue, I was like, hello, anyone who wants to listen, I have a course. Do you want to buy it? Like there was a lot of lead up. It just wasn't the traditional sense of like having to do all these super structured things. I would just talk about it and share that I was working on it and watch for like people who were interested and try to answer their questions and make sure that they were getting on the wait list. So I did do some good marketing leading up to the launch. I built up a wait list of, I want to say, I'm trying to remember the exact number. Let me look back at my notes because I have in here, I guess I'll go ahead and share that with you. So the launch list was 338 people. My entire email list is closer to, actually it's past this now. It's like over 10,000 people. So this is a very small percentage of that entire list, but that's how many people I built up who were saying at the time. That list is higher now, but that was what it was at the time of the launch. So I was sending the first launch email out to 338 people. So yeah, leading up to it, I was talking about it the launch constantly on Instagram. I had 2 weeks on this podcast where the content was aimed at designers before the launch. And then during the launch week, there was another episode that was aimed towards designers. And all 3 of those were super popular. They did really well at the time and are still getting heavily downloaded. I will link those in the show notes because those are seriously awesome episodes. And if you are enjoying this one, you'll probably like those too. And I emphasized on social media and in those episodes the importance of getting on the wait list if you wanted information, because that would be the only way to see the sales page and like the information on it. And I think that was important for building the wait list. And I stuck to this. I actually never shared the sales page or any of the main details of the offer outside of the waitlist group. So like on the day of, I wasn't saying, hey, you gotta get on the waitlist, but then all of a sudden there's a swipe up on my stories to the sales page. Like I did not do that. But at the same time, I was not secretive. So I openly shared the price beforehand. I showed the exact payment plan options. I showed exactly what the modules were and what was going to be inside of them. I literally even showed on my stories like what the inside of the course looked like once you purchase. So you have a visual for like, okay, like where is it hosted? Like what does it look like? All of that kind of stuff. I was not secretive. So I was saying get on the waitlist if you want in, but I was not holding captive that decision-making information people need, like the price and what's included and payment plans and all of that. So it was not join the waitlist to know the offer. It was like, I'm telling you about the offer here in as much detail as I can on like Instagram or on a podcast episode. And now if that sounds like something you could want, you need to get on the wait list. And I think that's really important because I think sometimes it can be a little bit of feeling like manipulation when you like won't tell people the price. I'm like, just tell the price. I feel so strongly about that. So like very early on in talking about it, I was sharing the founding member price. And then when I decided to include payment plans, which I wasn't going to do at first, I'm so glad I did. We'll talk about that later. But once I decided to include them, I shared the exact payment plan options. And I was chatting with people of like, okay, what card payments are going to be available? How will the payment plans work? What if I'm in another country? Like, what time is it going to launch? Like I was having all these conversations. What do you mean by this module? Do you think it's good for me if? Like all these conversations were happening, both on my stories, like to everyone following me, and also like in DMs and in emails with people. So I think that's really important to emphasize here. And I think that really helped the launch go as well as it did. So that was the lead up. And now I want to talk about the launch itself. So I made a pretty sweet sales page, if I do say so myself. And I had about a 10-minute long video of me talking face to camera. It was not professionally produced. I did it myself in my office. It wasn't amazing quality whatsoever, but it also wasn't low quality. I'll say it was somewhere in the middle. But I was just talking. I had some like notes that I knew I wanted to like speak through about the offer, and a lot of that same content was on the sales page, but I made a sales video too. And again, that was like 10 minutes or so. So that was on the sales page. There were multiple calls to action. I think it's a really nice sales page. Like I'll end up using it again as like the base for the second launch, and obviously just changing some of it, the language, since it's not the first time it's being released, and add some testimonials too, which is going to be awesome. I already have so many amazing testimonials, and these founding members are not even done yet. So that's really, really cool. So the sales page was a big element. I worked with my copywriter, Emily, to write 4 emails that were going to go out during that 5-day cart open period. And so we had those prepped and ready to go like pretty far in advance, all set up and scheduled in ConvertKit. And I had all the bells and whistles ready to rock. Like I had the Facebook group all up. My team understood like what our goals were with the group. There were directions for members when they joined of like, here's what to do. Like as soon as you join, here's an onboarding survey. Go to the Facebook group here. Go to Kajabi here to see what's inside. Like all of it was very organized. And I will say, I think I thrive on that kind of stuff. Like I had so much fun setting up the automations because I have been in the boat where I purchased a course and spent like what feels like a lot of money on it. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, how do I even get the content? How do I get in the Facebook group? And you feel like immediate buyer's remorse because you can't figure out like what to do next, whether that's a course or something like a website template, whatever. I've been in those situations. And I've also been in situations where I buy something and feel like so immediately nurtured and comforted because the person sent a very streamlined process of like the receipt comes in and then you get like access to the course content, and then you get directions for how to get started. Like, so I wanted it to feel like that, not like, oh, you just gave me your money and now what? So I felt very strongly about that being a good process. I tested it multiple times and it was all set up and ready to go. And another thing I did that I think is really cool, and I was excited I was able to do this. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to time-wise, but I was. So some of the course was already in there as a surprise. So the way I marketed this offer, it was a beta launch, and I marketed heavily that you are not getting the course until months later. And I did that because that was actually kind of my original plan, but then I knew that I wanted module 0 to already be in there, which is just like, there's an intro video, there's details on the Facebook group and like rules for the group. And then there's a really cool exercise on like goal setting that I just super, super love and have done in my own business. And so those are all there. And then I also was like, it'd be cool to already have the first module though. And I sold it, saying that would not be the case, but then there actually was that module 0 and then one additional module in it. And then I actually have been delivering it as I create it. So they already have, like, the current students have already had like multiple modules delivered to them by this point, which is really cool. So yeah, that was something else I did though, is like I put that first module in and I like was not saying it was going to be in there. So it was like people join and they go in Kajabi and go to their like really beautifully laid out course portal. And it's like, oh wow, like there actually are already some stuff in here. So yeah, that was one thing. I had all the Instagram posts ready to go for the week about the launch, like written and drafted. I wasn't planning to post that much on Instagram about it because again, I was like hoping to focus more on emailing the wait list versus like attracting new people from Instagram. Because again, I was saying you have to get on the wait list anyway to get info on it. So yeah, but I did have some Instagram posts planned. I had that podcast episode already talked about planned for Tuesday, which this launch was a Monday through Friday planned launch. So this would be the second day of the launch that episode comes out. And I was planning for the intro and outro of it to be pretty heavily promoting like, okay, like you want to join this course, here's why, all of that. So everything was really well prepped and planned. And the day before the launch, which was a Sunday, I was just super excited. Like I honestly haven't had a lower stress launch than this one. I was pretty chill. I was excited. I loved hearing the people who were like already planning to join that they were so excited. I was just having fun and feeling good. And I was also excited because I knew at this point that when the launch was over, I was going to finally announce on social media that I was pregnant. I was wanting to wait till after my launch because I honestly, two things. One, that's like when you kind of are more in the safe zone to announce it. But then two, I wanted to like just have one focus on social media and I did not want to distract away from this launch by being like, I'm pregnant. So I knew I was going to be waiting and doing that the next week. So that was fun. I'm like, okay, cool. That's coming up. So yeah, I was just excited. And I think of the day before as being pretty chill. Like I don't even remember what all I did that day, which is like only a month ago. So I feel like I should remember better, but it felt really chill. And everything was already done. So I wasn't like, oh, I gotta like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this random thing. It was like, no, everything's already set up. The cart was already live. The sales page was live. Like everything was just ready to go. I was going to manually send the email because I like doing that for the first email. Like it feels fun to like click it and like be present when everything's being sent. But like generally speaking, it was all ready to go. So that launch started, like I said, on a Monday. And the way the launch like kicked off was just an email sent out to that wait list at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, which I have a lot to say about that time and like the timing of it. That's what we'll get to when I say things that didn't go well. So we'll get to that. But that was how like the launch started. And then I didn't actually post about it on social media till it was like almost sold out. And then that's when I started like talking about it, which again, this all happened so quickly, as you can tell from the title of it selling out in an hour. So I was limiting the course to 30 spots because of the nature of it being a beta launch. Like I did not want this to be a giant group. This group was getting some extra perks because of buying early. And I also wanted it to just be more tight knit. Like I wanted people that I could really get to know, get some great testimonials from, and really work with in a little bit of a more one-on-one nature even than I would be able to do if it was like 100 people. And again, I talk about that on episode 110, so go back and listen to that. But I was telling people, Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. The whole time leading up to it, that it was limited to 30 spots. Like I picked that number pretty early on. The often suggested number for beta launches is 20 people. And that felt too small to me because I knew in my mind, if I did 20, like I'm definitely going to be cutting out some people who are super interested in this. So that's how I ended up deciding on 30. And then 40 felt like too many, which is more of what I actually ended up with, which I'll also talk about. But because of me talking about the 30 spots, people who were interested saw like the scarcity of that. And it's funny because they saw it more than I did, which it's still so wild to me how quickly it sold out and how much everyone else all the people who bought saw it coming basically. Like people have talked about it in our Facebook group now. And I had leading up to it, some of the people who were like the people who bought in like those first 2 minutes tell me I knew it was going to sell out within those first couple hours. I'm like, it's so crazy because they were telling me that leading up to it. And I said back, like, I don't think it will, but like, I'm so glad you're excited and you think it will. And that makes me really excited that you think it will. But to tell you like what I actually thought would happen in all honesty. So I anticipated it would sell out, like that those 30 spots would fill. Like I knew in my mind, like I would have been very disappointed if they hadn't. Let's just say that because I felt like that's what made sense to me based on the number of people on the wait list and then also the like amount of excitement I was seeing around it was from more than 30 people. So I was anticipating it would sell out, but I was thinking it would be within the 5-day period. And my hope, like my goal was for it to sell it halfway through. So like on Wednesday. But I was preparing with like launch emails and all that as if it were 5 days. So that was like my expectation, if I was being honest. One day, like I would have been super excited about, but like an hour, I'm like, what the heck? Like that completely blew my mind. And again, though, some of these amazing designers who joined, they know who they are, but they like leading up to this were like, Elizabeth, I think it's going to sell out so fast. And then I had a few people like saying, I'm worried I'm not going to get in. And I was like, I don't know that you should worry. Like, I think it'll be fine. Like, you know, if you just buy on that first day, like at some point you'll be good. So anyway, I was just completely shocked. So let's talk about what happened, like how this all went down. Cause I know you might be waiting for me to have shared that. So, okay, here's like kind of the timeline of it. So I sent that email at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, like I said. Within 2 minutes of the email going out, 11 people had purchased, which was wild to me because it showed me that no one had read my sales page or watched that 10-minute video of me talking about the course. Like people literally like clicked the email, found the button that said like go to the purchase page, entered their credit card info as quickly as they could, and we're done. Because like that whole process I just described takes 2 minutes, you know? So anyway, it was really, really quick. And that showed me like if you market something well beforehand and give people the information they need to make a buying decision, they don't need to see the sales page. And if you listened when I did my episode recapping my sales funnel kit launch, which was last year in 2020, early 2020 is when I launched that. I talked about that then too, because I had this same sort of experience of like people just buying immediately. And that felt even more bizarre because you're buying a template where it's like you kind of need to look through it first, but people were just so excited and they bought it that fast. So anyway, that was the first 11 minutes, right? Or sorry, first 2 minutes was 11 people. And then within 30 minutes, it was at 25 spots. So the goal was 30. So it was basically almost full. And then it was full within an hour. So it hit 30 within an hour. And then I closed it in an hour and a half-ish when it was past full by accident, which I will talk about. Well, I guess I can go and talk about that now. So I did not shut it down quickly enough. So people kept buying, and it's really wild because I use Thrivecart, which I absolutely love. If you want to get a deal on Thrivecart, elizabethmccravey.com/Thrivecart will get you details on that. But that's the cart software I use. And it was delayed though on my end from like showing me people buying. So I did not realize it was at 30 when it was at 30. And I left the cart open, and then people like, I guess were like, once it got to be like 9:15 or so, people were still buying. And then all of a sudden I realized like, oh my gosh, it's at like 38 people. Like what? And then I had to close everything down, and I made the cart page not active anymore and relinked everything. So it went to the wait list instead when you went to that URL, and I did all that. But it took me a little bit of time because I did not have that automated, because again, I was not anticipating having to do this on this date. I was thinking I would set up it to be like more automated at the end of the launch week, which would have been like midnight Central Standard Time on that Friday. So it sold out really fast, and with plenty of people who wanted to join but didn't get to, which I'm going to get to in a second. But yeah, I was expecting an entire launch week, but it was a 1 email launch. And I'm still so excited about that. I'm really happy that's 39 people. Again, I wanted it to be 30 because that's like what felt like a good number to me. But like, no one's going to be mad that's 39, right? Like, I'm not mad about that. I still think it's a great number, and it has not felt overwhelming. And I truly think the right people are in this course, like people who are just so right for what I'm teaching. So that's felt really amazing, which I'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's kind of like the breakdown of what happened. And it felt so wild watching it all happen. I sat at my kitchen table. Adam was already at work for the day, so I had the whole house to myself, and I was just freaking out. I was messaging with Abby and Stacy on Voxer, and like within the 2 minutes, I had messaged them saying, oh my gosh, already 11 people are in. And we were just all celebrating and like shocked. And then, once people started requesting to join the Facebook group, we were letting them in. And it was just really, really fun, super exciting, and high energy. So there's not a ton I would change, like if I had a do-over for launching this, as you might can tell from what I've said so far. But I do want to share something that I would change, like the one thing where I'm like, I would totally change about the way this was executed. So that thing is that I sent the launch email at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. So that's the time I told people for weeks leading up to the launch. When I picked the time, it was because I had people asking me, like, hey, what time does the launch start? Because they were wanting to set alarms and put it on their calendar and whatnot. Because again, they were anticipating it selling out quickly, which I was not. But I picked 8 a.m. because like that's been the time I've done template releases. And, it's the start of the workday. If you start like before 9 and you live on Central Standard Time. So I was like, sure, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. But because of how early it was, people on the West Coast or in other countries woke up and it was already sold out, which was not good, right? That's not what you want. And again, like I picked it not anticipating it selling out so quickly, so I didn't think of that as being a problem. And there were some people in those different time zones that did wake up like in the middle of the night and do purchasing it that way even. But if you're wondering about like, ending up past the 30 people limit, I mean, part of that was me not turning it off quickly enough. But then another part of that was that I had a few amazing designers who had eagerly been waiting for the course and who like I knew like, okay, like you say you've been waiting, like I've talked to you about this. And they emailed me after the fact asking to get in. So there were about 2 or 3 people who fell into that boat. And so one of them was even later that evening. So like I'd closed the cart and then she sent me an email and it was like, so devastating. Like, she was really upset about not getting in. And I'm like, well, of course I want to let her in. Like, she was so excited and ready for this. And I knew she was excited about it. So that was kind of what happened there, of like getting to the 39 people too, besides just not closing it quickly enough. So yeah, that's one thing I would change. Next time, if I'm anticipating it selling out versus it just ending at a certain time, I would launch it more at like noon Central Standard Time. So that way everyone is awake. But again, I don't know how I could have done that better, because I just thought 8 a.m. sounded fine. It's not going to sell out in a day. But I had better anticipated people saying like, hey, I think it's going to sell out really quickly. I would have chosen a later time. And I actually did start to like anticipate a little bit that like, oh, I wish I hadn't picked 8 a.m. when I had people telling me they were setting alarms in the middle of the night, or like that was like, 6 a.m. for them or whatever. I thought about changing the date, but the time rather. But at that point, I'd already said 8 a.m. so many times. It felt like it was going to be hard to like re-communicate that it was now, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or whatever. So again, thinking back on it, that's really the only thing I'd change. I would have not made that sales video, I guess, since I don't think anyone watched it. And that was like quite a bit of work for me to make. So maybe that would be the other thing. But really, that's the only things that I feel super good about how it went. So now I want to share a little bit of details of like the breakdown of some of it. And then I want to talk about ending the launch and for next time stuff. So those are like my last 3 details for you here. So like I said, it was 39 people in the group. The goal was 30 and I closed it at 39. I did offer payment plans, which I'm so glad I did. I actually was not planning to at first, because I was just like, I'll just keep it simple for this beta launch. And then when I do a public launch later, I'll do payment plans. But I had a few people ahead of time like asking specifically, like, it would be really cool if you did a payment plan, because that would really help me be able to like swing this right now. And I'm so glad I did, because it was, 39 people total. Almost exactly half of that chose payment plans, and then the other half went pay in full. So now looking back, I'm like, okay, that was a really important feature to have offered, because clearly, like literally half of the people felt that that was the way they wanted to go, and they saw the 2 options. So that's something I'm really glad that I ended up adding in. And again, I wouldn't have done that necessarily without having been talking about the price and stuff leading up to it. So then I was able to get the feedback from people of, are you offering a payment plan? If not, you should. So that's that there. And then I'm not going to share the exact launch numbers like of the financial side, because I don't really feel comfortable doing that on this podcast, but I will say it was a multiple 5-figure launch. It was not the biggest launch I've ever had. I've had bigger template launches and I've had bigger sales. Like our Black Friday sale last year was bigger, but it was for sure the most money I brought in a single day, and certainly in a single hour. Like, wow, by a lot. And it was so bizarre, like later that night thinking about it when it was all said and done and talking to Adam about it, like the finances of it. I made more in this launch alone than I would have in an entire year at the salary I had at my first corporate job. Like that just felt so wild to think about, of like the comparison of like an hour versus an entire year, which to be fair, like there's, you have the hour that you made the money, but then with the course, it's like, I still hadn't created the course yet at that point. So that was still something I had to do, but still like the comparison felt really crazy. And it was a really cool experience. Like just everyone buying so quickly and all of that. And all the students are absolutely amazing. I was very prayerful that the right people would end up as founding members, because I wanted to like get the right people in the course. Like that felt really important to me, especially when I think about like limiting the spots. I'm like, I want these to be the right people for what I'm teaching so that they will get results from it. Like I always want everyone to get results, obviously, but it felt especially important because this offer was a little different. Like it wasn't completed yet and all of that. And I also, in like preparing for how to market it, I had some worry that people might think the course was completely finished and that they were buying like a finished course. So I was very careful to communicate, and I honestly probably over communicated a little bit, that it was not a finished course, that it was a beta launch. It was founding members. You are getting a discount because it is not done. But it was really important to me that people knew that, because I did not want someone to purchase and then be like, oh, like there's nothing yet. I have to wait a few more months. Like what? I'm so disappointed. I want a refund. I'm mad. Like I did not want that. So I really communicated that extra hard. I'm glad I did too in that first email, because since that's the only one that ended up getting sent, but it was communicated very clearly in there. There was even like a PS at the bottom saying that like, hey, this is not finished yet. but they did, they get all the extra perks for being founding members, which is really awesome. But I do feel like the perfect group is in there. We have a lot of people who are like super eager to learn. They're actively already taking the course as the content comes in, participating in the Facebook group. Like our Facebook group has been so active, and coming to coaching calls, all of it. It's just so incredible. Right now, as I'm recording this, we have another coaching call coming up this week, and I'm super excited about that. Like I love getting to coach on these calls. So so let's talk about this too, of ending the launch, a little bit of like what that felt like in that process. So when I finally got my stuff together and was able to hide the cart page and put up the waitlist page, that was when it was closed. And like I said, I let like 2 or 3 more people in after the fact when I got those emails saying, oh my gosh, I just woke up and like it's already sold out and I was planning on buying today. So that's kind of how that went. And then it closed at the beginning of what I expected to be a 5-day launch week. And so that day, I was expecting to be like planning Instagram lives and like posting tons of promotional content, but instead I spent the day like celebrating, welcoming new members into the Facebook group as people were like introducing themselves. And then I also re-recorded the intro of the podcast that would air the next day to not say the cart was open, because in that podcast intro, the original intro was like, hey, join the course now, it's open. And then throughout the episode, I think I still talk about it like it's open, but I made sure to like make a disclaimer at the beginning of like, hey, this actually sold out and it's closed right now. Go on the wait list here. And I aired the rest of the episode as is instead of like scrapping it, because it really was a good episode. So that's episode 106. If you're curious to go back and listen to it, it's like a Q&A with me about running a successful design business. So basically, since the cart closed so quickly, all of my content for the week had to get deleted. So I had, those emails planned. I had an Instagram post written, and I had planned for an Instagram live on Tuesday, like all this stuff. So I scrapped all of that. Like I didn't completely like delete it. Like I still have those emails drafted in ConvertKit, probably to use as a base for like the next launch. But I was like, okay, I can't publish any of this now. And so I actually decided to pivot and announce that I was pregnant the next day instead of the following week. So like I had said, I was planning to like do the pregnancy announcement probably like that next Monday or Tuesday after the launch was over. But Adam and I talked about it, and he was like, yeah, I'm fine with you sharing sooner. And I was just so excited and was like on a high from how fun the launch was. And then it felt really fun to go from like one big thing to the next. So like selling out the course, and then the next morning saying, hello world, I'm pregnant. Like that was so fun. And I was so eager to share that news that it felt like a total gift to get to share it sooner than expected versus waiting that whole launch week to get to share it. So that was really cool. And then what else? I mean, it's so funny because like that was such a significant day in terms of like I sold out a course, made more money than I ever had in a day. And then I went to like a really basic Mexican restaurant for dinner to celebrate and spent probably like $30 total between my husband and I for dinner. So we went to like a local Mexican spot over near our house kind of to celebrate. And that was fun. And we talked about the launch, and he was really tired because he had just been on a hiking trip, and it was fun. Like it was like very like somewhat uneventful though, like celebrating it. And I normally like to do like a massage or something to celebrate launches, like do some sort of like fun thing for myself like that. But I actually scheduled a massage, and then I ended up canceling it because I learned that you're not supposed to get massages in your first trimester of pregnancy. And I was like just on the brink of like the second trimester. So I was like, I need to wait. And so now I still have that like to be scheduled, a prenatal massage. And that will be part of my way of celebrating. But yeah, it was like the significance was in the fun leading up to it, and like now all that's to come of like creating the course and then serving these awesome students. But like that night, it's like, yeah, I went out to like the same place I eat most like Monday nights. So anyway, that's that. Okay, so now I want to talk about what I will do different on the next launch, like what would be different to wrap this up. So I am going to open the doors to the course again this summer, like I had mentioned, likely in June. And this time will be a normal launch, so not a beta launch. However, I do still think I'm going to follow that philosophy of keep it simple. Like I think when I'm having the work of like creating the course still, I'm pregnant right now, and I'd rather put my emphasis on serving the students once they're in versus like doing all the bells and whistles ever for the launch. Like that's how I feel right now. And this will be a course that I have for years to come and continue to launch and relaunch and open the doors to it and all of that. And I do think like for future launches, maybe I will do more bells and whistles stuff like challenges and cool stuff like that, video series, like all these cool things you see people do. But for now, I'm like, yeah, it's just going to be pretty simple. And I am excited about that. But for what I'll change, I am going to consider doing a webinar this time, or at the very least, Instagram Live. Like I had said, I'd planned one for this launch, and I had to like basically decide on the time and everything to do it on Tuesday, but then never got to it because of how quickly it sold out. So I'd love to do that, maybe multiple Instagram Lives or multiple webinars. And then I might run some ads this next time. Like I had no desire to do that this first time, but I could see that being something that could make sense during the next launch week and leading up to it, maybe like ads for the wait list, sort of thing, like maybe towards a freebie or something like that. And with this next launch, I will be doing a big emphasis on joining the waitlist again, because that will help me gauge interest and really communicate with people who are interested. Because, if you're just following on Instagram or listening to this podcast and hoping to like catch it, when we're talking about a launch that's only 5 days, like there's so many ways to just completely miss it. And so email really helps like guarantee that you're not going to miss it. So I'm excited about that. And I think a lot of the stuff I'll keep the same though, generally speaking, if you can't tell from what I just shared. And I really am. I'm just so excited about this program. I'm so excited about launching it again. I have like prospective launch dates on the calendar right now. And I'm just excited to get more designers into it. If you've listened to past episodes, like this is something I've been dreaming about since like 2017, before it even made sense for me to teach on this. Like it's been something that like I knew would be something I'd want to do at some point. And the feedback I've gotten from students so far has seriously just been amazing. I've had multiple people say that like just one of the modules they've taken has felt like worth the total cost, or just the coaching call and just the Facebook group has felt worth it. And that's exactly how I want people to feel and how I want it to feel again for like this later launch. Like we're going to keep some of the same elements that made this beta launch special. It'll just be with a larger group. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And I'm excited too with this future launch for like when you join, if like you came because you're like, I really want to know Elizabeth's entire process. Like you'll be able to just like skip to that module, or I really want to know how to like master discovery calls and have a system there. You can go to that one. Or I want to know how to like better market myself on Instagram, or how to like finally network with other designers and like copywriters and photographers and other people your clients are hiring. You can go to that module. Like I want you guys to be able to jump around, which the beta group is not getting to do, but they are being so patient and still learning so much. And it's just been absolutely awesome. I'm actually going to dive back into our Facebook group after I'm done recording this and like respond to more posts in there and give more advice and feedback and everything. It's really fun. So I've already just seen so many wins though, like people sharing that they've successfully raised their prices and booked new clients at the higher rates, booking more clients in general, a lot more confidence around their business and selling. A lot of people have been changing their packages because we just released the module on pricing. And in that, it talks about like choosing your pricing, choosing your packages and all that kind of strategy. So there's been a lot of that and just so much more. So it's just really cool. Like I love seeing other people succeed and being able to play like a small part in that in some ways. Oh, and people like starting podcasts, like so much cool. So I decided to go all in on YouTube and like just marketing better. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like I could keep going. I need to stop because we're kind of hitting the timeline I was thinking for this episode. But anyway, these designers are seriously amazing. You're going to hear from them more. They're all so incredible. So anyway, if the course sounds interesting to you and you're like, oh yeah, like that sounds like it could be for me, and that's part of why I clicked play on this episode, go to elizabethmccravey.com/waitlist. And for those of you who are not designers, I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it that you can maybe implement with your next launch of like learning from what worked for me and what didn't. I would say like my biggest takeaway overall that I hope was communicated well in this episode is that you don't have to do a million things to have a successful launch. Like I think if I had not capped the number, like it could have easily been like even double the amount of people in it with just not that much stuff, like not that much bells and whistles, so to speak, from a marketing perspective. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in feeling like, well, this one person says I need to do a webinar, or this other person says I should do a challenge, or I heard once on a podcast that like a pop-up Facebook group is like the only way to launch. Like, it's not. You can do it much simpler, and still have a lot of success and still get the right people in. And I think a lot of it is about communicating and creating excitement and anticipation, and also making something people actually want. I think that's one of the biggest reasons launches flop that we don't think about. If you've ever listened to an episode, I'll be sure to link to in the show notes, but I did an early episode in this podcast about the first time I ever tried to launch a product. It was pre-made brands, and it completely flopped. I did not sell a single one for months, and then ended up, I think I sold 2 total before I took it down, but no one wanted it from me. That was why it flopped. And people did want this course from me, and people did want templates from me, and that's why they didn't flop. So I think that's something just to think about too, of like making sure you're making something that people actually want before you put all the time and energy into it, which, to tie it back to episode 110, where I talked about why I chose to beta launch. I mean, if you're not sure if people want your offer, doing a beta launch is a great way to do it, because you can gauge interest before you create it. Which again, I'm not going to I could almost like say everything I said in that same episode again, which I won't do. But if you did not listen to that one, definitely go back, because I talk even more about this launch in that one, and some more details about like the strategy behind why I did a beta launch, which is probably pretty interesting to you guys, if you've made it this far in this episode. Okay, so that is it. Again, hope you enjoyed. I'll be back next week with another episode. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today and for staying until the end. I appreciate you being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, then I want to invite you to check out my online course and coaching program for designers, Booked Out Designer. In this program, I teach you how to build a successful in-demand booked out business as a designer. You'll learn everything from the exact experience I take my clients through to things like figuring out your niche, mastering discovery calls, pricing your services for profit, creating contracts that will not cause you legal troubles, and my exact social media strategies to book clients. You even get to watch recordings of me in actual meetings with my actual clients, so you can really learn through what you're seeing. We take things you're learning on this podcast and so many topics I never even cover on this show and deep dive into them. So in addition to the amazing course, the course is 9 modules of teaching with over 90 lessons. You get group coaching calls with me and access to an exclusive Facebook community of designers just like you. And fun fact, this isn't one of those kind of Facebook groups where the founder never comments on posts or you never see them in there. You'll find me in there all the time, ready to help you out with any business question you have. So to get info on the course and to see when the doors will be opening again, head to elizabethmccravey.com/BOD, short for Booked Out Designer. I hope to be able to coach you and teach you inside of the course soon. And don't forget that you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And a great way to support the show is to leave a rating and review, share it with a friend, share it on social media. All of that will help get the word out. All right, I'll see you again next week.